Meet Shaun, a deadbeat average guy who lives a monotonous, dull life that matches his surroundings. Here's Shaun's typical day. He wakes up, goes to work, then goes to the Winchester, all while disappointing his girlfriend with his lack of ambition. Later, a zombie apocalypse wakes him up from his zombie-like days and brings to light the idea that modern-day humans sometimes live just like zombies. Shaun of the Dead uses stylistic and cinematographic choices to draw a parallel between modern man and the behavior of zombies in typical fiction such as Dawn of the Dead. It parodies the genre to ultimately say that the modern man's lifestyle is just that of a zombie, caught in a routine which is dull, soulless, and brainless. This is shown through a few things: setting, which includes the location and soundtrack; imagery, which involves color and camera angles; and characterization of zombies and the main character himself, Shaun. Shaun of the Dead emphasizes the similarity between modern man and zombies through the environment, upbeat everyday music, familiar locations, and direct lighting, which make zombies far more relatable to the viewer in this film than most others. This critiques the fact that humans today act similarly to zombies. One main place that the movie focuses on is the Winchester bar. The Winchester is where Shaun and Ed would go all the time, and also part of the reason that Liz broke up with Shaun. The Winchester symbolizes a routine, safe haven for Shaun. We see him there throughout the movie, when he was on a date with Liz trying to feel better after his breakup, as seen in this scene. Later, he decides that the bar was the safest place for everyone to barricade themselves away from the danger of the growing number of zombies. Through the use of very upbeat songs for the soundtrack, Shaun of the Dead parodies other zombie flicks, but also comments on a zombie-like sense of uniformity in modern times. For example, the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack, titled Bloodbath City, implies that the movie will be very somber and related to a lot of bloodshed, which is exactly what happens in Dawn of the Dead. It points out that a zombie apocalypse is a disaster. This is typicast. The Shaun of the Dead soundtrack is titled Everybody is Happy Nowadays. It is a form of rock and roll. The upbeat rhythm points to a certain kind of liveliness. However, the title, Everybody's Happy Nowadays, and the feelings that it evokes are part of the whole satire. We see that no one is actually happy at the start of the movie. They are all zombie-like in their routines. This ironic, forced title reflects the soulless, dull life of modern-day Britain. The background characters wear drab clothing with muted, unsaturated colors, contributing to the idea that humans are already zombies in the way that they live. Dull colors reflect lives and routines that lack excitement, ambition, or motivation. In this scene, the bright red color of the seats and green pole in the picture creates a contrast that draws the audience's attention to how people on the bus already looked faded and washed out, like modern-day zombies, even though an apocalypse hasn't hit London yet. This draws a parallel with how people live as if they already were zombies. By placing bright imagery and high color saturation, Shaun of the Dead effectively parodies the idea of dark-lighted zombie films. Imagery in Dawn of the Dead is dark and industrial, giving a feeling of alienation contrasting with the bright lighting usually present in supermarkets. Most people think of supermarkets as something lively, bright, and full of people. However, here the supermarket is quiet, bleak, and empty. This shows that there has been a catastrophic and quite alien change. In contrast, Shaun of the Dead has bright and saturated imagery of suburbia. The film is making a statement that zombification is not an alien concept, but something that is familiar to all of us. The zombie-like status of modern life does not begin at any apocalypse, but actually is already present in our current state of life. Shaun of the Dead parodies Dawn of the Dead to point out that zombification and dullness are all facets of modern life in general. We can see Shaun walking to his store in a dull, routine-like manner both before and after the zombie apocalypse, and the imagery is essentially unchanged. This scene in particular highlights that the neighboring area is so familiar to Shaun that he does not notice the actual zombie danger present. Shaun of the Dead illustrates the concept that zombie-like modern life is a danger in itself due to its familiarity. In Shaun of the Dead, the camera angles used to capture zombies are often close up and eye level. This contrasts with camera angles in Dawn of the Dead, in which the camera is angled below and zoomed out, showing a large group of zombies in silhouette, making them hard to distinguish. By showing close-up features of zombies, Shaun of the Dead humanizes them. They are filmed in the same way that humans are filmed, which emphasizes the fact that they are unique, even on a physical level. This further draws parallels between humans and zombies, and that critiques the fact that our mundane routines can even make us look like zombies. Many interactions between characters are humorous, but ultimately serve to show that man and zombie are not so different. Take this scene at the beginning of the film.
Oh my god. She's so drunk.
Where Shaun and Ed find one of the very first zombies of the apocalypse. They swiftly dismiss her condition as simply being drunk, a comedic way for the film to note that people and zombies are not quite so different. Now, this is pretty atypical for a zombie film. Most of the time, the undead are entirely brainless. This narrative choice is very deliberate, and again serves to underscore the commonality of man and zombie. Additionally, zombies are portrayed as more harmless than typical zombie movies do, which further emphasizes their similarity to everyday people. Shaun doesn't even notice the zombies after his hangover because they resemble the humans that they were before. Even after Z-Day, zombies are used for labor and entertainment, filling in for many jobs that just a few months ago living humans must have had. Even after his friend Ed turned into a zombie, Shaun continued to play video games with him at the end, as if nothing much had changed. Overall, the humorous interactions between humans and zombies show that zombies are relatively harmless and retain some of their personality traits from when they were human, which, of course, intentionally critiques that humans and zombies are very similar. While most characters in Shaun of the Dead remain static throughout the film, the main character Shaun experiences a transformation as the film progresses. At the beginning, Shaun's life is the routine of his zombies. This is shown first of all quite obviously by the plot points. A mundane dead-end job, a failing relationship with his girlfriend Liz, and the only bright part of his dull days being a regular break at the Winchester. Following the same mundane routine each day, he has become indifferent to change and has few ambitions. This film tells us that Shaun is already a zombie, chained to his routine even before any actual apocalypse. It takes a zombie plague for Shaun to see what he has become. This massive break in routine is what forces Shaun to distinguish himself from the zombies that hunt him. He takes up the mantle of leader among those trying to get through the plague, something his previous self would likely never have done. As the zombie situation progresses, Shaun stands out more and more as a leader and learns how to take initiative, finally breaking out of the zombie-like days that plagued him at the beginning of the movie. Ultimately, Shaun exits the apocalypse a man transformed for the better. In a way, a sort of reverse infection has occurred. He has gone from a zombie to a man. This forms a positive, hopeful subtext to the film's overall critique of the zombie-like routine of modern life. It implies and indeed encourages that one can and should break routine and become man again. By using such statutory techniques such as camera angles, imagery, color saturation, setting, and characterization, the tragicomedy Shaun of the Dead, with Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, and Nick Frost, parodies the entire zombie genre as a whole. It specifically focuses on how zombies are not necessarily some alien force, but a familiar one, to the extent that it takes a while for people to recognize danger. In its own way, the film offers several meta-commentaries on its own, especially regarding routines of people living in the modern age, and it critiques them in a way to show that dull routines are perhaps dangerous. The lack of life, both literally and figuratively, presented in Shaun of the Dead leaves the audiences in a conundrum. The routine nature of modern life is so similar to zombies that even before and after the zombie apocalypse, the routines of people themselves are very similar. Perhaps Shaun of the Dead, beyond the obvious parody of the zombie genre, leaves the audiences thinking, do we define our routines and how are we controlled by them?